Perfect. Well, I will take it away. So I want to say a massive good evening to everyone and welcome to SUPA's Industry Expo. We are super excited to have you all attend what we hope will be a very informative event. Before we get stuck into anything, I would like to do an acknowledgement of country. On behalf of those present, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land Swinburne's Australian campuses are located. I pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. We also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands and waters across Australia, their elders, ancestors, and recognise their continuing connection to and aspirations for country. First off, I would like to thank all of our guests who have taken the time out of their schedules to present tonight. Very grateful you all here, not wait to find out more about yourselves and your organisation. And a big thank you to everyone for attending our very special and first ever Industry Expo. The team at SUPA had an amazing vision a long time ago to connect psychology undergraduates with various fields of work and its representatives to get a better understanding of what exactly you can do with a bachelor degree in psychology. Richard, our VP, who came up with Industry Expo, originally planned this event in person and was meant to run back in August. However, due to the ongoing restrictions, we were left in a bit of a stump. I want to thank the amazing efforts of the SUPA committee for rallying so quickly, especially after our Careers and Cocktails event, and coming up with an idea such as this. We have an amazing array of representatives here tonight who will be giving us some very important information on your possible career opportunities. Just to give a short rundown of our presenters, tonight we are joined by Emily from the Lizard Centre, Anne from WA Department of Education, Rosie, Olivia and Bridie from Eating Disorders Victoria, Jessica from Heal for Life, Khoi from Mercy Health, Glen from Nimai, Jessica from St John's of God Healthcare, Maree from Royal Melbourne Pain Management Service, and Rebecca and Anu from Lifeline. We'll just go through how tonight is going to run. The plan is that each organisation or individual will present for around 7 minutes, explaining who they are and what they do. After all the presentations, we will open breakout rooms to work as virtual stalls where attendees can jump in and out and ask our presenters questions like you would at a career expo. We will then come back together after about 20 minutes to wrap up and close the Zoom at around 9:30. Just going over some housekeeping. Please keep your microphones on mute for the entirety of the presentation. We will actually mute you all so you won't have the option to jump in. Just save all those questions for the breakout rooms towards the end. You're welcome to leave your cameras on. However, you can also turn them off if you prefer. However, camera and microphones might be great for the breakout rooms just to make for a more engaging experience. If you need help in the breakout rooms at all, you should see SUPA next to our names for any committee members, or you can message myself, Richard, Izzy, or Emma if you need anything at all. We will be taking photos during the event, so please let us know if you don't want your picture taken. And remember to be respectful of our presenters and your fellow attendees. We hope you all enjoy this event, and I'll pass over to Richard and Em, our VP and President, for a few words.
Perfect, yeah. So I'll probably just speak on behalf of both of us tonight to keep the time running because we have a lot of speakers lined up and that's what everyone's here for. But yeah, pretty much, yeah, we're just thankful for everyone for attending tonight. This is the third out of our latest series of professional development events or networking series. Which previously, yeah, as mentioned, we've done the Careers and Cocktails night, we've had our honours presentation night, and now this is sort of for, yeah, all the psychology students we think that aren't really sure what they're doing after the degree. It's like, are we going to go for psychology or do I want to get into some other workplace? So, yeah, I hope you all enjoy it, and I'll hand it back to Jem.
Perfect. I don't really have much else to add. So if everyone is all ready, we might jump to our first presentation for tonight, which will be from Emily from the Lizard Centre.
Hi, everyone. Can I just check, am I okay to share my screen for PowerPoint slides?
Yes, you
can. Yep.
Perfect. Oops. And there we go. So as Gemma said, my name's Emily. I'm a BCBA, which stands for Board Certified Behaviour Analyst, and I work as a behaviour support specialist at the Lizard Centre. So I'm going to do my very best to give you an overview of ABA and the sorts of services we provide in a few minutes. So applied behaviour analysis, you might ask, what is that? So it is the application of the science of behaviour to improve socially significant behaviour. It's based on 50 plus years of research. We do data-based decision-making. We provide individualised curriculum, and it applies to all behaviours in all settings, all people, regardless of age or diagnosis. I wanted to go over some of the common misconceptions of ABA. Firstly, that ABA is a science for autism. Some people often think that one of the A's in ABA stands for autism, and that's not the case at all. ABA is a science, and we can apply it to wherever there is behaviour. Second misconception is that ABA is only for behaviour reduction, that we are rung as when there's challenging behaviour or a challenging situation, and again, that's not the case. We are so much more than that, and our services provide so much more. Another common one that we hear is we don't use ABA, we use PBS, which stands for Positive Behaviour Support. There is only one science, and that's behaviour analysis. Both ABA and PBS are based on that science. So I suppose you need to ask yourself if you're collecting data and using that to make your decisions. If your programming is based on evidence and research literature. If you emphasize reinforcement of desired behaviours, if you provide individualized programs, and if you conduct functional behavioural assessments. So ABA has been successfully applied to many different areas. And here is just a few kind of from the literature that we know of. I suppose my point is that if you were looking to become a BCBA or work in behaviour analysis, it's not necessarily working with children with autism. There are many different avenues that you can take. So a day in the life of a BCBA, I thought that might be quite useful to know. This would be a typical day for me. So providing RBT supervision, that stands for Registered Behaviour Therapist, which is a recognised qualification. This can be observing therapists, giving feedback, discussing tricky cases, providing kind of steps for that learning and progression. I also provide that to BCBAs, which is just that level above. Then we might do ongoing program development. So this is our database decision making. We will look at all the different programs that we have in and all the data that we've been taking for our clients to track that progress and make any changes if we feel it's necessary, introduce new targets or new plans, whatever's needed. Then we might do assessment sessions. We do lots of these, lots of different assessments too. This is one-to-one client-facing services, and they're my favourite. They're definitely the fun bit. Lastly, we might have a parent meeting. We might be joined by other professionals, kinder teachers, OTs, speechies. It might be a meeting to kind of discuss progress, go over new assessment results, or provide training. Talking more specifically about the Lizard Centre, we are all over Australia providing centre services and home therapy to children with autism and other diagnoses. So at the Lizard Centre, we work with children between 18 months and 14 years. In Melbourne, we have more of, I suppose we're more specialised to early intervention, but we do have a few older clients. And I suppose the take-home message is that there is no diagnosis. As we said before, we're based on behaviour. So it doesn't matter if a child has ADHD or autism, whatever it is, we're looking at what we can observe and we're working with that. So we conduct assessments, as I already said. These can be developmental assessments, functional behavioural assessments, or academic assessments. We teach lots of skills. We teach functional communication. We teach children how to play, independent living skills, all those daily living skills, academic targets, and also social skills, group skills and classroom skills. And then obviously a huge part is creating behaviour support plans. So at the Lizard Centre, this is kind of the company structure. With a bachelor degree in psychology, you would come in as a Lizard behaviour therapist. We actually have a top talent procedure at the minute where people can be kind of picked out and put through their RBT, which is great. It's a really incredible experience, especially for uni students. I know Gemma's very familiar with that process, so she'll be able to help with questions. Then moving up, we have assistant behaviour support specialists who normally are working towards their masters in ABA, behaviour support specialists who are normally BCBs, and then senior centre clinicians and directors. What makes a good therapist? So you have to like children, you have to be enthusiastic, be able to be a little bit silly and have fun. You have to be motivated to learn behaviour analysis. You know, there's so much to learn around it. Receptive to feedback and being patient and professional. I think I did quite well then. I don't know what time we're on. But if this sounds like something that you're interested in, something that you'd like more experience with, obviously, I'm sure you can get my email or we can chat at the end. But we are always looking for entry-level therapists. We always have jobs going. We work all over Melbourne. So if you have a CV and a contact number, you can send those to careers@lizardcentre.com. If you put SUPA, sorry, I wasn't aware of the abbreviation, in the subject line, then they'll recognise your application from this talk. There we go. Has anyone got any questions? I don't know how we're doing for time.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for that. What we will do, Emily, is that we'll leave questions to the end, just during the general panel. And what we'll do is we will move right on to Anne now, if you're ready to go, Anne. Awesome.
Hello, I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. Well, welcome all the way from Western Australia, where it is 4:49 in the afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to talk with you all this afternoon. I'll try and keep to my 7 or 8 minutes. I am here to talk to you particularly about working as a psychologist in schools. So the job title here in Western Australia is school psychologist. I'm a psychologist with general registration. I also have a teaching qualification. I'd love to share with you a little bit about what we do here in Western Australia, what psychologists in schools do sort of broadly in similar roles around Australia, what the pathways are to work as a psychologist in schools, and in particular, we have a big election commitment where we're employing more people, so I'm sure you'll be keen to hear about that. So moving right along. I won't talk through these in too much detail. I think those points speak to themselves. School-based mental health services are really, really important. You know, there's a lot of evidence that's coming out, even pre-COVID, about the number of young people with mental health disorders and experiencing distress. 1 in 7 students. We've got some fantastic research coming out of Western Australia with the Telethon Kids Institute. There's a whole lot of research around. We know that suicide is the leading cause of death for young people. Most importantly, one of the things that we know from the research that we've looked at is that school psychologists have a really unique role as school-based mental health experts. In Western Australia, our school psychologists have a presence in every single public school, and we do a lot of work from prevention through to intervention. Now, psychologists in schools, you'll hear, I think in Victoria, you have a big strategy there where they're employing mental health practitioners, which could be psychologists, I think, with general registration, or social workers or mental health nurses. In New South Wales, I think they're called, it's called the School Counselling Service. And they have a big initiative there also to be employing psychologists and people with psychology degrees. In Queensland, I think they have guidance officers and guidance counsellors, but they've just made a big announcement about employing more psychologists. I'm really proud to say in Western Australia, I've been with the Department of Education for just over 25 years. And my job title has been school psychologist for all of that time. In Western Australia, we all have provisional or general registration, and we are all psychologists. So I guess in terms of working as a psychologist in schools, you really have the capacity to make a real difference in the lives of young people. In terms of the size of our service in the West Australian Department of Education, we've got about 500 psychologists working in metro country and rural locations. We're the biggest employers of psychologists in Western Australia. In WA, and maybe it is the case in other parts of Australia as well, you might provide services to more than one school. You might provide services kindergarten through to year 12. You might work only in a senior high school. There's lots of different options here. One of the things that really attracted me about working in schools was the capacity to be very diverse in my work. I didn't want to be locked in to do one particular area of work. I really love the fact that as a school psychologist, I get to do, assessment, get to do counselling, working in the area of mental health, incident management, quite a lot of organisational psychology, and working both at that individual therapeutic level, but also a large part of the work that we do is actually, really getting the best bang for your buck by working in an indirect way. So a lot of the work that we do is really consultancy work and working with teachers and working with the system, working with whole schools from prevention through to intervention and other agencies as well. Our workforce here in WA, look, we are very used to provisionally registered psychologists. In fact, we've got about 84 level 1 school psychologists working with us, so 4+2 or 5+1 interns. I will say that our 4+2 interns all have teaching qualifications, and that's been the long held historical pathway. I was talking before, I understand at Swinburne you don't have a 5+1 Master of Professional Psychology program yet. That might be something to talk to Monica about, but here in Western Australia we have 3 Masters of Professional Psychology programs, and that particular program, the 5th year and then the 1-year internship, we take a large number of those students on placement with us. I'll talk about that in a minute, and then we have pathways to employment. So our school psychologists based in metro or larger regional centres, this year we've employed a record number of new people, and we're still going. I thought I'd give you a bit of a snapshot of our workforce profile for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar with the great state of Western Australia. I think Victoria fits into Western Australia about 7 times or something. We've probably got about half the number of students and half the number of schools. But you'll see we're a largely female workforce, which is fairly consistent with the psychology profession more broadly. And we have 8 education regions as well as statewide services where I work, which is a more specialist consultancy area. And the most number of our school psychologists are in North Metro and South Metro, our 2 metropolitan regions. But as you can see, across our big state, we employ large teams of psychologists in our country regions. The fastest growing and the largest cohort of psychologists in our workforce are early career, so 25 to 34 years of age. The work, as I said before, as a psychologist in schools is really diverse, and I'm sure it looks similar around Australia. I mean, you would know all of these sorts of schools by different things in your states, but of course we have regular primary schools, regular senior high schools. We also have things like engagement centres and alternative learning settings. We have, specialist settings that deal with the most difficult, the most disengaged, the most disadvantaged young people, and also, of course, specialist settings for students with disabilities, remote community schools, residential colleges, you name it. So I think that's one of the wonderful things about working in schools, is the ability to be able to work broadly and really in a diverse way, but also to be able to specialise in an area of strength and interest for you. Right, who are we employing? Look, in terms of what might be applicable for you there at Swinburne, yes, our focus over here in WA is the graduates of the MPP program, the 5-year program. But for all of you who are finishing a 4th year sequence of study, if any of you have also got a teaching qualification, then I would love to hear from you. So we've held a long-held tradition of having a 4-year psych degree and a teaching qual. And many of you would know that you used to be able to do a 1-year secondary diploma of education, which I did. And those 1-year dip-eds have gone by the wayside for a 2-year Master of Teaching, probably for the same reason that the 4-year psychology programs will go. So in terms of all of you at Swinburne, obviously, if you've got, as I said, a 4-year sequence of study and a teaching qual, and you'll be the last cohort that comes through with a 4+2 internship, then we're really interested in employing you. We have many, many 4+2 interns who've all got teaching quals. They achieve general registration. If you are doing a 6-year master's program, we absolutely are looking for graduates of 6-year programs. You will all graduate with general registration. An area of specialist title, so is it not a requirement to work as a school psychologist in WA. I mean, we have people who have clinical masters or clinical endorsement or ed and dev as a specialist title, but there's not a requirement, but we do have some of those people in our system. So moving right along, here's the free set of steak knives talk. We have a great starting salary, and the starting salary for a graduate, which for us would be a 4+2 or a 5+1 intern's about 77,000. That's today, it'll go up next year. But once you achieve general registration, your salary moves to about 90.5 with increments, and we have senior school psychologists and lead school psychologists. So great career structure, great opportunities for career development here in Western Australia. We have also got your internship covered. So one of the great things we do in the Department of Education here in Western Australia is that we provide your principal secondary group supervision and a graduate induction of professional learning that we think is the envy of every other state, apparently, around Australia. But we've got a fantastic graduate induction program that runs over 2 years for all interns and new employees who have general registration as well. We fall under the Teachers General Agreement here in Western Australia, so we don't get exactly the same holidays as teachers, but we do get 8 weeks of vacation leave. As I said before, professional development and career advancement opportunities. And if you are keen to come west, we will relocate you and your family and your dog and your cat and your boat and your caravan and all of those other things. So there's lots of benefits for coming to WA. These are the students who've come on placement with us this year from our local universities, Murdoch and Curtin, and we've also taken students from Edith Cowan University in the first year of their MPP program. This is before they started their placement, so they're looking bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and very excited. So the MPP programs here, they do an 8-week placement, external placement, and of course we're COVID-free here in Western Australia, so all of those things have continued over here in WA. We also take other students on placement by arrangement. We've taken students from 6-year master's programs into our schools as well. So plenty of opportunities for placement. We've got lots and lots of board-approved supervisors who supervise those placements. Here we go. This is our team in the Kimberley. For any of you who've been to Broome or been to Kununurra, been to the Kimberley, I think it was 42 degrees there today. If you're looking for an adventure, we would love to see you. We certainly have vacancies in Perth, but we are always looking for people who are interested in an adventure to join us in rural locations. This is Kununurra. I spent 8 years in the Kimberley, and it was the most fantastic professional and personal adventure of my life. It was just absolutely fantastic. As you can see from the photo, early career through to very experienced psychologists in all of our country locations. We also have we're just about to start it in a couple of weeks' time, something called a LEAP program, so Leap into School Psychology. So we've had lots of psychologists who've worked in private practice or other areas, or haven't necessarily done a placement in a school setting, so they're really not familiar with what a psychologist in schools does. We are just about to run our first ever 2-week short course, which is completely funded by our department, to introduce people into working as a school psychologist. So it's a week of professional learning and then a week of work shadowing experienced psychologists in primary and secondary settings to hopefully whet people's appetite to working as a psychologist in schools. So lastly, I guess one of the things that I would suggest that people do is, if you are interested in finding out more about school psychology broadly, the APS website has got some fantastic resources, particularly the framework for effective delivery of school psychology services. Lots of great information about what psychologists in schools do and how that's different from other forms of psychology, particularly working indirectly and at that system level, as well as working at an individual level. There's a link in the slides here to our Department of Western Australia's career page about school psychologists, and we can provide you with these slides. You may be familiar with the Handbook of Australian School Psychology. Your very own Monica Thilking was an editor of that particular book. It would be available online through your university. Fantastic resource. And across Australia, there's the Australian Psychologists and Counsellors in Schools. There'll be a local chapter there in Victoria. In Western Australia, it's called the School Psychologists Association of Western Australia. But every state and territory has its own little organisation, and they all have fantastic networking and professional opportunities, and you become student members and network with people there as well. So there you go. I think I've probably gone over time, but in my slides, there's a link there to our careers page, which has got lots of information about school psychology in West Australian public schools. And there's an email address on that page that says, you know, contact our careers team. Well, that's me. There's no team, it's just me. But I would love to speak to any of you in our breakout rooms tonight or at a later point about a career as a psychologist in schools, whether that's in Victoria or whether you're interested in coming to the great state of Western Australia. There you go.
Thank you so much, Anne. That was a fantastic presentation, and I think you've almost changed my mind on my career path, so thank you very much.
We'll talk later, Izzy.
Great. And if anyone is curious about looking at the links, we will make sure that you get access to those links after tonight. Next, we have Rosie, Olivia, and Bridie for Eating Disorders Victoria. So, girls, whenever you're ready, just hop on whenever.
All right, you should all be able to talk now.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Let me just get my PowerPoint ready.
Thanks, Bridie. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us tonight. It's lovely to be with you all.
Beautiful. Can everyone see that okay? Fabulous.
Great.
All right. Rosie, happy to kick us off?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name's Rosie. I'm joined with Bridie and Olivia tonight. We're going to do a bit of an overview of who we are at Eating Disorders Victoria, and then we'll go through a bit more about each of our individual roles. We all have a bit of a different background in psychology, as you can see on the screen here. So we would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're joining each other on tonight, from many different lands it seems. And we'd also like to acknowledge the lived experience of eating disorders and any other mental health experiences that may be present tonight. At Eating Disorders Victoria, the lived experience really informs the work that we do. We have a significant number of employers in our team who have lived experience with an eating disorder or as a carer. And these are our core values: perseverance, connection, courage, and optimism. And we're a not-for-profit organisation, so we work across many different parts of the sector. So we support people who are in recovery, we support carers, and we also do training of health professionals to really lift awareness of eating disorders and how we can connect people with the treatment that they need and deserve. You know, we really believe that people can recover from eating disorders. So we think it's really important to intervene early and lift awareness and education around them.
So I guess something that I sort of came into EDV starting to realize, I've been here nearly a year now, is that we do a lot. We have a wonderful variety of services on offer within, you know, an amazing non-for-profit organization. So some of the things that we have on offer, you can see here on the screen. I'll just speak to each of them very briefly. So our hub is a free and confidential phone and email service that provides information and peer support for people experiencing eating disorders, or those who are supporting these people, so family, friends, and also professionals, a lot of health professionals. And our hub is managed by a full-time coordinator, but it's actually staffed entirely by volunteers. So we have a really amazing group of volunteers, a lot of them who are psych students who commit to a few 4-hour sessions on the hub. And so they actually provide one-on-one, sort of general sort of support and counselling via the phone for these people that call up. It's a really amazing opportunity. If that sounds like something you'd be interesting for a volunteer experience, please do get in contact with us. And another thing that we have, which is really fabulous at Eating Disorders Victoria, is we have a really amazing telehealth team. And I know Rosie can speak to that in a little bit, but we have a telehealth, 2 telehealth nurses and a few telehealth counsellors who provide free online sessions for people that are struggling with an eating disorder, as well as carers. And these sessions, are really fabulous. They're really accessible in that they're free and they're online. And we managed to really connect with quite a large group of clients in this way. And it's a really, really, I think it's a really amazing thing that we're able to offer, particularly in the climate right now where the wait lists are really long and things like that. And we also have online support groups for people that are in recovery, as well as we have some groups for people that are carers. And this is something that I'm involved in that I am a facilitator for these sort of groups. And the training that we receive is within Eating Disorders Victoria, and we run off a peer support lived experience model. So all of our facilitators are trained in the peer support space, using their own lived experience of an eating disorder to kind of guide the groups. And they're a really, really beautiful space to interact with clients in. We also have a really amazing peer mentoring program. And so this is for people that have recovered from, or who are in recovery from an eating disorder. And the program provides them with a one-on-one mentorship with a person who has recovered from an eating disorder that is sort of known as a peer mentor. And it's been a really successful program. We've gotten a lot more funding to kind of extend the number of participants and mentors that we're able to get on board. And it's a really amazing thing. And I know that Rosie also has been involved in that program before. And also, you know, it's always a good one to keep an eye out on if that sounds like something you're interested in. For anyone that might carry lived experience, the mentor role is a really beautiful role to explore. We also have a carer coaching program. And so this is for people who support adolescents who have been recently diagnosed with an eating disorder. And the coaches are people that have supported their own child through an eating disorder. So as you can sort of start to see, we really do rely on that sort of lived experience expertise, which I think is something that's really exciting to explore as sort of the lived experience workforce within public mental health kind of actually starts to find its feet a little bit more at the moment, which is a really exciting space to be in. We also have a really amazing clinic that we run, and that's something that we're really proud of. And we have a number of really amazing trained specialists, mental health clinicians, dietitians, psychologists. And we actually have a student clinic opening up next year. So for anyone that might be looking to do some provisional work, do keep us in mind. And we also run various professional and educational psychoeducational programs that Liv and Rosie and myself a little bit at the moment have started to sort of give out to the community. And we have a really wide range of clients that we deliver these programs to. And we also have a really amazing website and social media and a podcast. And I will sort of do a little plug as well that if anyone out there is a social media guru that would like to sort of explore the work of some mental health advocacy work in the social media space, we are actually looking for a digital communications officer. And it's a really exciting role. It's a really cool role. So if anyone is curious about that, please do visit our website. But I guess, yeah, I've got a little QR code. If anyone wants any further information, go on and give that a scan. There's lots to learn about EDV. We are an awesome organization, and I do encourage you to go give us a follow on Instagram. But I guess we'll move on to now who we are and what we do within EDV. I'll pass over to, Rosie and Olivia, and then I'll go.
Great, thanks, Friday. So I'm Rosie. I work across 2 roles at Eating Disorders Victoria. So I work 1 day a week as a wellbeing telehealth counsellor, and that's offering support for people with eating disorders and also carers. We do quite short sessions, so 30-minute consults over the phone or over Zoom. So a day in the life in that role is a few clients throughout the day. In between, it's quite collaborative. I might chat to the telehealth nurse. We may talk amongst the team about how we can support each person the best that we can. And then in my other role as education officer, day to day, I'll be developing programs for people in recovery or carers, or creating workshops for health professionals. And then there'll be facilitating as well. So quite a dynamic role across the different days, which keeps things really exciting. And there's been lots of opportunities to be involved in trainings and learn on the job. So as much as you can learn before you start in a role like this, I've definitely found that I've had those opportunities to develop those specific skills for working in the eating disorder space. So I might jump over to Olivia to share a bit more about her role.
Sure. Hi, I'm Olivia. I have been at EDV for a couple of years now. I might start with how I landed the role and then get to what I'm doing now. I approached EDV when I was completing my honours thesis, because I was looking at how women feel about their bodies after giving birth, and sort of got into the disordered eating space. From there, I came and met with the education team and began interning in the education team as a result of that. I was really fortunate in being able to work with them across a range of different projects, helping to develop some of the presentations, and I am now getting paid to deliver them, which is quite exciting, and I think shows the I suppose the journey that you can go on from starting out as a volunteer to now I've had several paid contracts with the organisation in a range of different areas. This is a career change for me. So I had a nearly 10-year career in PR and communications. So I've come to this a bit later in life. And I've brought that experience with me, and I think that's been really helpful in the roles that I have undertaken. I'm currently being employed to assist with the budget submission, so developing our proposal to try and get more funding for the next 3 years so we can keep doing the amazing work that we do. And that's probably a really good example of using everything I've learned within my comms degree, as well as what I've picked up through my psychology studies. So I'm currently doing my MPP. I'm doing that at Melbourne University, and really enjoying that, and really excited about what will happen and where that will take me. But the eating disorder space is something that I'm definitely incredibly interested in. And I'll hand over to Bridie now.
Great, thanks Olivia and Rosie. Just in the interest of time, I'll keep this a little bit brief, but I actually started out as a junior administration officer, and my job was actually made available through a Working for Victoria grant. So that was a COVID-based funding sort of position that opened up, and I had actually just graduated from my honours and had been knocked back from every master's application I'd applied for psychology. So luckily I had some interest in the non-for-profit mental health sector space before, and that I had volunteered for the Butterfly Foundation for a couple of years, and I was always quite an organised person. I like admin, so tried my hand at being an administration officer. And I will say, I think it's a really amazing way to learn about how these sorts of organizations work. If you're really interested in finding out more about mental health advocacy and how a non-for-profit runs, I highly recommend admin is a really fabulous way to start. It's a really fabulous way to connect in with the team. And as a result, I kind of was able to show that I was really interested in working with clients a little bit more. So I was able to attend some trainings in the way that I was actually offered then after attending a training for support group facilitation. I was offered a position within our group teams and have been running those now for about 5 months, which I've absolutely loved. I really, really love the space of peer support. It's a really beautiful role. And I've also done some training to run some of the programs that Rosie and Liv have developed in their time, and have been starting to run those with some young people externally, which has been fabulous. So yeah, I do a little bit of everything within the organization, but I really, really love it. And it's a really beautiful community and a really lovely space to work in. And just I know we're a little bit over, but I guess this is just a very brief overview of all the work you can do within the eating disorder sector. And the sector needs people, they need passionate people. But something like a mental health organization like us, there's community health, there are hospitals, day programs, youth services, and of course, education. And we're very happy to answer any questions you have around this sort of content in the breakout rooms later. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, everybody. I will, yeah, if that's our contact details, but we can talk more about that later. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosie, Olivia, and Bridie. That was an awesome presentation. We'll move right on to Jessica Frisina for Heal for Life. So Jessica, if you're ready to go.
I am. Can you hear me properly?
Sure can.
Wonderful. Well, first I'd like to thank SUPA for the invitation and hosting this event. It's wonderful. I'm learning lots as well. So it's a wonderful opportunity and I'm glad to be here. So my name's Jess and I'm a psychologist with general registration and currently employed by Heal for Life. Now, who's Heal for Life? Heal for Life is a non-for-profit organisation and we aim to empower survivors of childhood trauma to heal. And the bulk of our services are focused on a 5-day residential program located in New South Wales, Hunter Valley. And these programs are run in a group setting. A heavy focus as well is we heard from Eating Disorders Victoria based on peer support and lived experience from the practitioners that are involved in walking alongside our guests. And this group setting is the most common, but we do private one-on-one programs as well. We are willing and able to take on adults, teens and children in different groups, depending on ages and the demand there. And as well as running our in-person programs, we also have a range of online services, as many companies have had to adapt at the moment. We now run a 6-week and a 10-week series online for either preparation before entering a healing week or aftercare, which would be the 10-week series. So depending on what situation you're in or the client is in. And it's not based on joining a healing week. It can be just wanting to get some more information about topics related to trauma and discovering if that's the way someone wants to go or not. So as well as those services, we also have the Trauma Centre in Newcastle, and this includes trauma-informed individual psychology or counselling sessions. And apart from that, we also run trauma-informed practice for a range of professionals, and we've seen schools, other mental health providers, and also prisons and guards over in the UK. So that's a bit of a summary of the services that we offer. Another important one is also trauma-informed healing for therapists in particular, and this is to provide ongoing training and professional development. So we're always expanding and tweaking the services we provide, but that's the bulk of it. So how did I land this role? Well, I remember being at a networking event similar to something like this, and one of the recommendations was to keep in the loop. You know, it could be sending an email to a connection that you've made, and that's exactly what I did. So after connecting with the founder of Heal for Life, I sent her an email about some relevant research that I thought she might be interested in, just to, stay connected. And so this went on for some period of time. And then I was invited to edit one of the Heal for Life books on a volunteer basis. and I was very happy to be a part of that. So I completed that task, and then that continued on to reviewing social media posts or collecting references for articles, volunteering on youth programs, that sort of thing. And this all happened alongside my psychology studies. So I was able to incorporate them both. But essentially I was, making myself involved and making myself known and offering the skills that I had in a place that was meaningful to me. So it was a mutually, beneficial arrangement for both of us. So the connections that I made, I suppose, led to my role here, the paid role, because when the organisation was in a position to expand, I was there ready, and the networks and the connections were already made. So it was just a natural progression and evolution. And so I think that's a really important takeaway about forming relationships beforehand and what you can put into volunteering opportunities, because it can really pay off in the end. So what does a day for me look like? What does my role entail? So it's mostly based on research. So this would mean coordinating with a supervisor at a university to get a research project started. And this is really to be focusing on program outcomes and the model implemented here at Heal for Life. I'm also involved in internal evaluations and reports. So this would be from an organisational perspective to look at program outcomes. Also collecting data from staff and volunteers to examine how process could be improved and evaluating things from that front. I could also be involved in consulting other team members about policies and procedures and reviewing certain documents going out to clients. I also facilitate one of those online groups that I mentioned before. So I just did one today. It was a 6-week series. And so before that actually gets started, I might contact clients beforehand to really figure out what they're wanting to get out of the group and to determine if they're suitable. And then in part of running the group, I would be collecting feedback, generating reports based on that feedback and that kind of thing. And then, of course, involved in meetings and supervision and my own notes. And at this point, I think it's really important to include part of my day-to-day work is self-care. Because I think in this role, we're drawn to it for a particular reason, whether it be some lived experience or our own exposure. And so self-care, I think, is so, so important. So for me, this looks like scheduling breaks in my day, setting time after work to decompress in some way, whether that be letting off some steam or nurturing whatever I feel like I'm needing in that moment. So I think that really ties into the ability to be able to keep offering our services as the years go on, because our work's so needed. But if our cups aren't full, we can't be helping other people. So how did I get here from an educational point of view? So in my undergrad, I completed an arts degree, majoring in psychology. And then I added business to it because I didn't really know where I was headed. And then once I decided I wanted to be a psychologist, I really focused all of my energy into my psychology subjects to make sure I got the grades. And then went on to complete postgrad dip in psychology. And then from there, the last hurdle was Masters of Educational Psychology. So after that long process and many, many years at uni, I then graduated, and my placement experience during my master's program really, opened doors. And so this included the volunteering that I did at Heal for Life, and that's led me to where I am now. I did have some extra training for this role in particular, and some of which was being involved in the trauma-informed practice that I was talking about earlier, and also other learning modules offered by Heal for Life on topics related to trauma for continued professional development. So that's a bit of a look into a not-for-profit organisation and how the pathway could look from starting off volunteering. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions and provide more information. Perhaps we'll do that in the breakout rooms if you'd like to join me. But otherwise, thank you so much for having me, and on to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was awesome. Okay, we now have Khoi. Khoi, whenever you're ready to get started, just head off.
Should be good.
Yes. Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yep, perfect. Yes, so yep, so my name is Khoi, and I social worker working for Mercy Health. So a little bit about Mercy Health. We are a private hospital in regional New South Wales. And in the particular facility that I'm working at, we specialize in rehabilitation, palliative, and geriatrics, aka elderly patient. And as the role that I'm working at, I am a sole practitioner social work in my area. So I'm practically covering 3 to 4 hospitals in the area, and that can be from 90 to 100 beds. And if there's any concern from any other nursing staff or allied health, they can make referral to the social worker, or even the patient and the family member can even do a self-referral for them to access my social work service. For a day-to-day activity that I do at work, so the cliche here is that no 2 days are the same, and because hospital is usually a chaotic environment, it usually requires people like a social worker to be really flexible and be adaptable to a constantly changing situation in the hospital. So I usually start my day with having a look at my current caseload. If there's any other new referral, I initiate intake, triage, perform biopsychosocial assessment with the patient, with the staff, or the patient family. And the job of a social worker can be very varied in a hospital environment. So we are talking about not only assessment, we are talking about discharge planning, case conference, case management, that usually include negotiating, having a working knowledge and negotiating discharge with not only the patient and their family, but also being able to hold up a conversation with the medical officers, the doctor, the specialist, the nurses, any other allied health, such as physiotherapists or occupational therapists, making sure that the patient, if they do get discharged, they are connected with the right services. So a lot of the work I do is about making appropriate referrals. It can be to connect them with the appropriate NDIS service, or trying to connect them with financial counselor or domestic violence service. And in quite rare circumstances, it can also be about making the application to the civil and administrative tribunal as well, if there's any concern about the patient or their family's well-being and their decision-making capacity. And in terms of my caseload, like the characteristic of the patient of my caseload, it can vary as well, from rehabilitation to even community outreach, geriatrics, palliative, especially if there's any concern from the staff, because the patient can be economically or socially marginalized. They can be experienced domestic and family violence, elder abuse or neglect, experience of sexual assault, homelessness, suicidal intention, their intention to discharge against medical advice, child protection concerns, etc. And that's the majority of my caseload. And how do I get to this role? So basically, in Australia, social work is a self-regulated occupation. So usually you need to have a social work specific training as well. So I finished my Bachelor of Psychology as an international student from Vietnam, and then I went straight to another 2 years of Master of Social Work. And after I finished my postgrad, I applied for a job, and went through the usual interview process and so got the role at these private hospitals. And if you do want to pursue a social work career, I know that studying further after a 4-year degree of doing a 3-year degree of doing psychology degree can be a little bit overwhelming at times. But if you do pursue social work career, especially in health, you can specialize in either rehabilitation or acute palliative oncology, domestic or maternity, any child protection issue as well. So it depends on how you want to go forward. And I think that would be it for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Khoi. We'll get moving right along because we are a little bit behind, but that's okay. I'll move this right on to Glen now. So whenever you're ready, Glen.
There you go.
Great. All right, thanks. Hi, everyone. Look, the first thing I want to say, I think, is you would be some of the luckiest people around, because I think with the current environment, you can choose where you want to go and turn up and just knock on the door. So probably the best time to be doing what you're doing at the moment. NEMI is a mental health NGO. We're completely funded by government. We started over 30 years ago in the northeast of Melbourne, which is what the silly name comes from, Northeast Alliance for the Mentally Ill, but we ditched all that. We just call ourselves NEMI National now. And the significant thing that's happening, particularly in Victoria, is the Mental Health Royal Commission is starting to roll out new services. The first tender actually came out just before I came online tonight. So it's starting to happen, and it's going to be big. NEMI is probably a fairly large NGO. We're in 5 states and the territory. So a bit over 1,200 staff nationally, but about 200 staff in Victoria, including our head offices in Preston, and another 150 staff there. And we support about 300 consumers in Victoria. So what sort of staff do we employ? Half our staff have allied health quals, so psychology, social work, OTs, and some nurses. The rest have a range of diplomas and certificates in a range of community services. And the critical thing about, particularly about what's happening with the Royal Commission rollout of their of what's going to happen in Victoria, the rebuilding really of a broken mental health system, is from this point forward, mental health services will be partnerships between full-on clinical services and well-being services, and NGOs have been retagged as well-being services. And the other critical thing is lived experience roles are going to be significant. So a lot of effort is going to be put into building and recruiting and training and supporting people with a lived experience. The other point to make in NEMI particularly is 60% of our managers are recruited internally, not because that's what we try, but you know, when you grow good people and they want to stick around, they've got that opportunity. I'll talk about the services, and I'm not going to talk so much about our client group, but when you see the types of services we provide, perhaps you'll get a bit of an idea of what we're doing. And so, you know, most clients are coming to us with mental health issues or a background of trauma, but there's other stuff that we've been pushed into, for instance, homelessness, which I'm sure I don't have to tell you that there's a hell of a lot of mental health issues in homelessness. as well as AOD issues. So we do full-on clinical teams. So this is a bit new for NGOs, getting into clinical teams, including employing psychiatrists and clinicians. But when we do that, we try and mix those teams with lived experience people and also allied health and support workers. We do quite a bit of crisis support, and we've done well, a hell of a lot more over the COVID period of time, and a lot of money has been thrown at us, and we've, as have a lot of other NGOs, and they've had to pick up and really ramp up services to provide support. We're in the suicide prevention space. We work with youth in some of our programs from 12 up. I said before, we're in homelessness and housing. We also work with some clients that have been involved in the justice and forensic systems. So that's more heavy duty, people with quite complex presentations and needs. We've got some Aboriginal services, but pitched particularly at Aborigines, and employ Indigenous staff and a range of people with lived experience in them. And we also do a bit of physical health work, but mostly physical health work for people with mental illness. People with a mental illness fare very poorly in the physical health space, and often die, 15 or 20 years earlier than the general population because of underlying physical health issues that are not dealt with, partly because of poverty, partly because of medication, partly because of lifestyle issues. The modalities really we use to engage our clients, we do community-based work and a lot of outreach. That's the vast majority of our work. But various programs also run a range of groups. We do a lot of phone and telehealth work now, far more now than we ever have because of the COVID situation. But interestingly, that's created a whole opportunity now because people have taken to it like ducks to water, really, and we're probably not going to go back to all the old ways of working and keep a significant amount of telehealth running. And we also have some residential programs where people can come live in those programs and undertake the programs with us for a period of time. We have a model of care called the collaborative recovery model that was developed by the University of Wollongong, and it was developed with consumers. So the input was entirely from people with a lived experience of mental illness and recovery. But if you pare it down to its very basics, it's a coaching model. We put the consumer or the client in the centre and say, you're the expert, it's your life. We're not here to try and tell you what we think might be best for you. We will work with you though on what you want to do. It's a trauma-informed model, puts the person in the centre. It acknowledges lived experience is the critical factor, and of course it's solution and goal focused, which I guess you would expect that we would be. The issue about providing training into people on a particular model is it's all gone in it's all gone but 14% in 6 months, and so we really struggled to think, God, we can't just keep jamming training down people's throats day in, day out to keep them doing this model. So what we do is we've incorporated the model into our supervision. So everybody gets an hour supervision every fortnight, and we've got that parallel process where we use the coaching model from the collaborative recovery model in our supervision, so that it's embedded and you've got that parallel process. If it's good enough to do with clients, it should be good enough to do with our staff. And of course, we have reflective practice sessions that are formal and regular in each team. The other thing is we've got a significant head office, and a lot of people from our services also get interested in coming into head office, which we really appreciate because it keeps the link between head office and people who are at the coalface, as opposed to them being in this black hole behind the scenes. So a lot of people get into the move across and step up into the research and evaluation team. We've got I think a team of about 6 in research and evaluation. The learning and development team, we do most of our training in-house. So that's quite a good sized team. And they used to spend their lives flying all over the country doing training. That's changed a lot, but I think they're probably itchy to pack their bags and get back on planes. So that's another option. Social innovation and design. So we're always trying to innovate what we do based on the research that we're doing and the internal evaluations that we're doing. Of course, there's quality, and in order to build that in, we employ people with a consumer experience or a lived experience, and that's a significant team as well, because we're trying to drive quality all of the time. Because our, how we get services is we apply for tenders, so it's a very competitive process, and you need to be at the forefront and continuing to innovate. And the other thing, of course, we've got is communications and engagement. That's it from me. That's a quick run through. I hope we've caught up some time, but happy to talk more in the breakout rooms.
Thank you so much for that, Glen. We're going to move right on to Jessica Ducat now. So whenever you're ready, Jess, just hop on.
Okay. So I'll get started. So I am the clinical lead of psychology and the positive behaviour support team within St John of God Accord. So you may have heard of St John of God. We're a non-for-profit health and community service provider across Australia and New Zealand. And I think we've also got a location in Timor-Leste. We have a number of hospitals, rehabilitation, community youth services, home nursing and disability services. So specifically in Victoria, you may know of Berwick, Geelong, Warrnambool, Bendigo, Ballarat private hospitals. We also have the Frankston Rehab Hospital, Pine Lodge, I think it's a 24-bed mental health hospital. Horizon House out in Geelong, where we do a lot of community, alcohol and other drugs, youth, social outreach. And we also have Accord Disability Services, which is what I'm a part of. So in terms of Accord has been supporting individuals with intellectual disabilities for about 65 years now. We provide, it's quite a big space, but in the context of the big healthcare organisation, we are just this really tiny little pocket. We provide accommodation services, respite, one-to-one support, group programs and day services, disability employment services, support coordination and allied health services. So a lot of our funding is via the NDIS now. And we have locations all across Metro Melbourne. So in terms of the allied health team, which is where I kind of sit at Accord, I think I'm very privileged to be part of such an amazing allied health team. We have a collection of speech pathologists, OTs, music therapists, social workers, allied health assistants, psychologists, and positive behaviour support practitioners. We all come from very different backgrounds, but I think one of the strengths of working with such a big allied health team is it allows for extensions in our learning across different disciplines, and there is a lot of overlap. So it's nice to lean into those other disciplines and seek guidance around how they might view certain presentations and, you know, their therapeutic approaches as well. We do have structured development programs for new graduates coming into our roles, and we've actually got roles currently advertised for psych, speech and OT. Being a part of the allied health team, we participate in regular clinical supervision, professional development. We do monthly case reviews, journal clubs, and we have research opportunities. Our music therapist is just completing her PhD, looking at the effects of music therapy on dementia. One of the things which I think is a collective across the team of why we like working at Accord is that we love to see the increase in quality of life for others, and those little increases are absolutely significant. You know, merely seeing, having somebody understand a person and their behaviours, seeing the positives and the strengths, and I think reflecting on my role, like when you are part of that change, it is just pure magic. So in terms of like what my day looks like, I work across the lifespan, and as an educational and developmental psychologist, that is pretty cool, I think. The presentations are quite varied. So I work with a mix of diagnoses. So it's global developmental delay, intellectual disability, ASD, cerebral palsy, dual diagnosis. I think every day is different. All my clients are extremely different. A lot of the reasons for referral might be around early intervention, mental health management and planning, emotional regulation, social skills. I conduct special disability housing assessments, functional behaviour assessments, and develop positive behaviour support plans. I do training on sexuality education and relationships, both with disability support staff, families, as well as with clients. I like that I am out in the community for most of the time. So I go into hospitals, community, residential aged care facilities, into whether it's disability accommodation or family homes. And at the moment, obviously with COVID, there is a lot of telehealth, and that's been really interesting with people with intellectual disabilities around access. Especially most of my clients, when I'm talking around intellectual disability, I'm talking more in the moderate range of ID. So being able to, one, have a device, access internet, being able to know how to utilise the device, engage in the device, and with me has been massive skill development for a lot of our clients. We do a lot of assessments. Report writing is huge, especially with NDIS, because it is around funding, and we do have those individual one-on-one capacity building sessions. As a clinical lead, I do a lot of clinical supervision with staff, which I really am passionate and I love. And being one of the senior clinicians, I'm involved heavily in organisational policy and procedure development as well. So I guess in terms of my journey through psychology, when I finished year 12, didn't get the results that I wanted, didn't get into the degrees, thought I'd, pick a social science degree, fell into psychology, didn't know anything about it. It was not a linear process at all. The aim was to just do a semester, then transfer out into what I wanted. that didn't happen. I really liked it. I ended up completing my undergrad with Swinburne, and from there wasn't sold that psych was for me. So I did teaching and statistics, and I taught statistics at Swinburne as well for a period of time. Before I, went and had children, I decided, yep, psych's for me, do my honours, don't recommend it with a newborn. And then eventually went on and did my Masters in Education and Developmental Psychology at Monash University. I do actively avoid my help debt. So if you are going to, explore things, maybe think it through a little bit and take that time. Once I finished my Masters in psych, I did a lot of work within schools and private practice. And I think my only advice to new grad psychologists is to get out there and explore what you like. I found working within schools quite monotonous. I think I was doing a lot of the same, and I really started to question, was psych for me? So, and then I think just by coincidence, I saw the job for St John of God, and I thought, I'll give this a shot. And I have absolutely loved it. In terms of training for my role, obviously I am employed as a registered psychologist, so I have done all my psych training. I've also done my endorsement program and a board certified supervisor. I do have targeted CPD every year. I probably do a little bit too much, but that's okay. Working within the NDIS space, I think there is a need for a great level of understanding of the legislation and the human rights. In previous organisations, disability organisations, legislation has been a big focus in the roles that I have been in as a authorised program officer. Understanding dignity of risk and duty of care is huge. And I think working within disability, I guess I love working with speech pathologists around my language, whether it's my verbal language and my non-verbal, learning to sign so I can communicate with some of our clients. Some of my clients, I do work with quite complex behaviours, so I have undertaken ethical response training and a facilitator of ethical response training. So that's disengagements, if there's the potential for assault. I guess, through that, working with the allied health team, I learned so much from the other disciplines as well. So that's something that I try not to take for granted. In terms of where psychology kind of fits at St John of God Accord, obviously we do have positions for psychologists. We also, I think as an undergrad, I wish that I knew about disability and a little bit more. Working as a support worker is great experience. It's flexible hours. We've got so many that actually do study and work as a support worker because it is such great work. It's very rewarding as well. Support coordination and specialist support coordinators are another role that people go into. We do have the psychosocial recovery coach, which I think kind of touches on some of the things that were said by Nimai. We do have allied health assistants, intake coordinators, which is great to get a bit of a taste of, the different presentations, working as part of the allied health team as well. We do include our intake and allied health assistants in a lot of our professional development because we're about developing the entire allied health team. Positive behaviour support practitioners, and we often host student placements. So if you are a student, whether it's 4+2, 5+1, do get in touch. We also have placements for music therapy, speech pathology, OT as well. So yeah, that's all from me. I will look forward to seeing you in the break.
Thank you so much for that, Jessica. We're now moving on to Maree. So Maree, whenever you're ready, hop on.
Okay. Yes. Hi, guys. So my name is Maree. Thank you for having me. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work at the Royal Melbourne in their pain management team and at the Royal Women's in their pelvic pain team. So the team is multidisciplinary. I work closely with physios, OTs, social workers, nurses, pain specialists who are usually anaesthetists and rehab specialists. And at the Women's, we have a gynecologist and a dietitian as well. So we see people who are living with persistent pain, which is defined as pain that lasts for longer than 3 months or beyond the expected healing time. So we see people whose pain might have started due to an illness or an injury or surgery and hasn't gone away, or people with pain associated with inflammatory processes, so conditions like arthritis, migraines, fibromyalgia, endometriosis. A lot of our patients have experienced trauma or adverse life events. So as you know, trauma affects the brain and the nervous system, which can lead to heightened sensitivity to pain, which is not to say that the pain isn't real or it's all in the head, but it is in the brain. So it's a nuanced distinction, but it's a really important one. A big part of what we do is to educate patients about pain. Instinctively, when we feel pain, we assume something must be wrong, and that's pain's job. It's to alert us to a potential threat, which is really helpful in the setting of an acute injury. Like when you break your arm, you feel pain, you're prompted to stop using that arm and you'll seek medical treatment, but pain is less helpful when it becomes persistent or chronic. And when you start to experience pain when you're not in any danger, but just trying to go about your day, which is what happens with our patients. So it can be really debilitating and have big ramifications for people's physical and mental health. Without the right educational guidance, people in pain will often reduce their activity, they'll reduce their movement, they'll stop exercising, they'll rest more, they'll cut back on work, withdraw socially, they'll can keep taking medications which aren't designed for long-term use. They'll worry that their bodies are damaged or broken, and these are messages that can often be reinforced by well-meaning but ill-informed health practitioners. So depression, anxiety, PTSD, complex trauma, bereavement, these are all common among people that are living with pain. So I know it might sound like a bit of a drag, but it's actually very rewarding and interesting. I think that more than in any other field of medicine, pain medicine really understands the mind-body connection, the power of the brain and the mind in changing our experience. And as a psychologist on the team, I feel like my role is really valued. So I've worked in other multidisciplinary settings where that hasn't necessarily been the case. When I finished my master's in 2013, I worked for Monash Health out in Dandenong at a residential care unit and in an outreach team supporting people with severe mental illness. So there's definitely a role for psychology there, but the therapy tended to be very biomedical, and the bulk of the work was really focused on supporting people getting their to get their basic needs met. So housing, healthcare, connecting to community. So they were my first 2 jobs out of uni, and at the same time I also worked in private practice in Hampton, working with young people and their families. So that was a very different client group with very different needs. And after about a year of working at those jobs, I left them to move to Berlin, where I didn't do a whole lot of work, but I did do an internship in a crisis centre for women who were experiencing family violence. But given my very pathetic German skills, my contribution was very limited. And then when I came back to Melbourne, I went to work back in the private practice and then applied for the job at Royal Melbourne. So I didn't have any particular interest in pain, but I'm really glad I went for that job because it's been very eye-opening. So when you're working in pain or with other chronic health conditions, it can be really slow going. and you have to adjust your expectations about what's possible for patients on what timeline, but it's pretty amazing to see the sort of power of neuroplasticity in action. And we have patients who have come to us who've been living in pain for years, whose lives have really shrunk in the face of pain. And by learning about their nervous systems, understanding what's happening in their brains and bodies, learning to approach activity and movement again in a way that makes their brain feel safe, learning mindfulness and relaxation skills, they're able to turn things around. So that can be a pretty amazing transformation to be a part of. And then that's about it. And this year I've opened my own private practice. So I offer telehealth appointments from the comfort and confinement of my own living room. So that's been a bit of a silver lining of COVID for me.
Thank you so much for that, Maree. We've got our final presenters, which will be Rebecca and Anu. So whenever you guys are ready, just get started.
Just give me 1 second, sorry. Oh, I just lost the list. All right, Anu.
Welcome everyone. My name's Anu, and obviously I'm going to let Beck introduce herself. I've been with Lifeline for now 2 years. I'm a crisis supporter, I'm an in-shift supervisor, I'm also a trainer, so training all the volunteers that come through the doors. And I'll let Beck introduce herself.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Like Anu, I've been with Lifeline for just on 2 years. I work with him in the crisis supporter training program. I'm a social worker by profession, and yeah, really enjoying my time at Lifeline. So we're looking forward to telling you a bit about what we do.
Okay, so Lifeline. Lifeline,'s a 24-hour crisis support service. 13 11 14 is our number, and I think people would be aware of that. We provide short-term crisis support. It's non-judgmental, anonymous service. And just to give you a bit of an idea, Lifeline answered over 1 million calls from around Australia in 2020. So far, calls to Lifeline increased by 25% during COVID, as at July 2021. And I guess we'll touch on this a little bit later, but each year approximately 65,000 people have attempted to take their own life. In 2020, there were 3,139 deaths by suicide. That's approximately 8 people a day, 64 people a week. So that number is considerably large, and Lifeline has made a commitment to sort of reduce that number as well. So that's, we'll find that out pretty shortly. So our purpose, to support Australians in times of crisis, and crisis can be anything. It can be a cumulative effect, but essentially anything that creates a short-term, highly distressed emotion. It could be for some people, it's the loss of a pet. For other people, it is losing a job, it's becoming homeless, it's suicide, domestic and family violence, grief and loss. And our vision at Lifeline is an Australia free of suicide. Our strategic foundations provide crisis support 24/7. We have a, not in Melbourne, but we have a text service, we have a chat service, and our goal is to essentially expand that crisis service to as many people as possible, promote emotional well-being and build community capacity. And part of that is we deliver suicide prevention training across and domestic violence DV alert training across the corporate and community sector with the police, the metro trains, the fire brigade, things like that. within Victoria specifically, Lifeline in each state has partnerships with different organisations to run their centre. And here in Victoria, Lifeline is partnered with Uniting. So Uniting is our sort of overarching company, and we sit within the alcohol and other drugs mental health division within Uniting. Becoming a Lifeline crisis supporter.
So how do you join our team? It's a really good question, and it's a bit of a process. I guess we have really high standards in our volunteer processes. The people that eventually end up on the phones are talking to people on you know, the worst day of their lives in a lot of cases. So we want to make sure that people have the skills and those attributes that put them in good standing to support those people in need. So our process kicks off with a written application and a group interview where we introduce you to some of the activities that we do in our training program, and we get to know you a bit more. If you're successful through that stage, we go through the usual checks and balances with police checks, working with children checks, etc. Then the training starts, and what's important about our training is that it's a 12-month commitment. There's a component of that you'll see a bit later that's face-to-face or Zoom training, as Anu and I are currently delivering. And then you get in the phone room. So from anywhere, I guess, after 12 weeks of classes, or our intensive programs get you through in about 4 weeks, you are on the phones supporting people in need. So it's a really good opportunity to put into practice your skills and knowledge that you bring into the phone room. We recruit people from all different backgrounds, vocations, different life experiences, because you never know what's coming down the phone. So we need a team in our room that is really approachable and has a lot of life experience there. So you spend the bulk of your training time, that 12-month commitment, in our phone room. At the end of that 12 months, you get your accreditation and you become a fully accredited Lifeline crisis support worker. Anu, could you maybe flick it through? This is just a quick slide to show what we're looking for. We do a lot of activities, and I know that we're speaking to a group of very knowledgeable and skilled people. What we're also looking for is that extra something. We're looking for people who can show compassion, who can be respectful, and who are really self-aware, so they're open to feedback, they're open to improving their practice and doing the very best that they can when they step into that phone room for our help seekers. So it's there's a lot of support. We'll go into that in a moment, but I think Anu is just going to run you through a bit of our course structure so you get an idea of what that 12 months will look like that you spend with us.
Thanks, Beck. So without going into too much detail into the nitty-gritty, at the end of, so when you become an accredited crisis supporter, you get a statement of attainment with the crisis supporter skill set, and the units that you cover are, as listed there, they're pretty self-explanatory. So it's important to highlight that the training is not just a training, it is nationally recognised. There are assessments, it's blended. And on that initial training, like Beck said, 43 hours or about 12 weeks. And if you do the intensive, you could be in the phone room in 4 weeks. Then you go to the student placement where you're on phones. You have a student mentor with you. We'll talk about that a little bit. Internship, that's when you're right, good to go on the phones. And then finally, you're an accredited crisis supporter. And you can see at each stage, there's different checks and balances, you know, different types of assessment, on the job assessments, interviews, role plays. So it's really designed to get you going, and it's really designed for people from any background. So I guess we're talking to a group of psychology students here, but please bear in mind that we deliver this training from bank officers to people from the fire brigade. So it needs to take that into account.
I guess we just want to touch on, a lot of people ask about the cost for our training. I can't speak for other centres, but for the last couple of years, our cost has remained at $950. So that helps us cover some of the costs of the training to you. And I guess we're delivering it to you at a very subsidised cost because we acknowledge the amount of time and energy that you bring to our organisation and to supporting our help seekers in the community. If Anu, you could click over to the next slide. We think you get a lot of bang for your buck with that $950. You get access to ongoing professional development. You have access to clinical supervision, both one-on-one and group supervision. We have a continuous improvement process. So we work with you while you're on the phones. We have in-shift supervisors who are in the room with you, available for debrief at the end of a shift or after a particularly challenging call. There's lots of support for you. We want to get you through the course and we want to get you onto the phones, and we want you to be as resilient as you can be. So we put a lot of time and energy into you. And like anything, checks and balances, we want people who are going to be committed to meeting the requirements, of, particularly in that initial 12 months. There's ongoing regular screening once you're in the team. And there's set hours. So even once you're accredited, because you're on the front line, we really want to make sure that your skills are where they should be and we're providing a quality service. So there's ongoing commitments around hours, professional development that you need to meet on an annual basis. And again, you still have access to that regular clinical supervision. Over to you, Anu.
Well, thanks, Beck. Lifeline Melbourne Careers. Essentially, you're coming through the doors as volunteer crisis supporters, like I did myself. And then from there, you move on to senior volunteer roles. So we have, like I mentioned, in class when you're doing training and when you're on placement, we have student mentors who've been through exactly what students go through in their training, and have been on the phone for a considerable amount of time. So they bring that experience, that on-the-ground experience with them in the training role. From there, you have the opportunity to do overnight paid service roles, which I became a part of eventually. So you do the overnight graveyard shifts, and then you obviously from there you can become in-shift supervisors, which I did. So and then you can go on to other management roles, such as the centre supervisors, centre managers, coordination roles. And now me and Beck, we're coming to you as CSWT trainers, so crisis supporter workplace training. We also, like we talked about, the suicide intervention arm, that's the community training and workplace. So that's where they do DV alert, they do accidental counsellor. So there's a lot of training that Lifeline does on the side, which probably people don't know about, but that's happening. And we'll see you in the breakout rooms for any further questions.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.